Hey, my handsome ladies and gentlemen, this is Shmeaty. Welcome back to the channel, or welcome if you're new. I was playing casually a couple months ago on the train, and I was speeding past a Pokestop. I was able to get the trigger for the rocket to go off, and it was a Ghost Grunt that gave me the rank 1 Shadow Sableye. And so I'm going to be testing it out today in the Jungie Cup. We are going to be trying out Shadow Gyarados Piloswine Core, as apparently this is pretty cool, and let's just see what it can do. Leading, unfortunately, in game number 1, Gyarados into Dunsparce. I'm going to throw one Dragon Breath and safe switch into Piloswine. Piloswine, of course, not a general safe switch, but given that I have a Ghost type in the back, which might even do worse into Dunsparce, don't think I want to switch that in, so I am just going to have to bite the bullet, bring in the Piloswine. We get the CMP tie, as well as some pretty useful chip onto that Dunsparce. That'll be helpful for later on in the game. They now bring in a Pelipper. Pelipper, definitely a washed Pokemon. There are better water flying types you can run, such as the one on this team. I'm going to fire off a Stone Edge here, looking to just delete the Pelipper if they decide to no-shield. Unfortunately for me, they do not. And now I find a place to put my Sableye. I'm going to fire off my Foul Play immediately here, as the combination of Foul Plays and Shadow Claws will be enough to take out the Pelipper. They do decide to shield it up, maybe thinking, because Pelipper would likely win CMP over my Sableye, likely thinking that I was going to build up to a big move before sending. They are now going to go for a Weather Ball. I'm going to have to shield this up, and I do have a pretty substantial amount of residual energy with my Sableye here, so I look to throw at the last second, but I miscount. I don't take into consideration the short cycle for Weather Ball, and unfortunately my Sableye is going to go down with quite a bit of energy stored. Bringing in the Gyarados, the opponent brings in their Dunsparce, but they are switch locked, and that means that they're likely going to throw a move to get rid of my Gyarados immediately before I throw my energy. I'm able to preserve all of my Gyarados energy, play into the CMP tie, maximizing the energy generation I can get from my Gyarados. Gyarados gets the Aqua Tail that will KO the Dunsparce, and now whatever they bring in, the Pelipper's too low to make another move. It would just get Dragon Breath down. So they opt to bring in Trevenant, and I overfarm as much as I possibly can. But I make a mistake. They catch onto their Pelipper. I must have thrown on alignment, but the Trevenant had the Seed Bomb loaded and opted not to throw it. I'm not entirely sure what that was about, but Gyarados was definitely in range of any move from the Trev from there. The Crunch will KO. GG's to them. Getting into the next game, Gyarados leads into a pretty interesting Pokemon in Pangoro. Pangoro, of course, a pretty unfortunate thing for the Gyarados to see, especially if they build up to 5 and send a Rock Slide. I'm going to be in trouble. I am going to be able to fire off an Aqua Tail. The Pangoro shields, as Pangoro love to shield. This isn't the worst. I am going to see that they've built well past the Rock Slide, and I'm going to no-shield. It's just going to be the Night Slash. I won't be able to outpace, but they opt to switch into Dunsparce, which means that I have free reign to just bring in the Piloswine, and Piloswine is actually pretty capable of absorbing multiple moves from Dunsparce, because as I've referred to Dunsparce before, it's the disappointment Pokemon. It doesn't do the damage you need it to do when you need it to do that damage, and so we're going to be able to build up to the back-to-back Icicle Spears, and it is a CMP time, but we're actually kind of okay with that. I think I could live this drill run barely, but I'd rather not risk it because the Pangoro can come in at any time and just snipe us. They opt to do that right now. And now do I decide to shield up the Piloswine? Indeed I do. The Night Slash is going to be shielded. I have the back-to-back Icicle Spears though. And that means Pangoro is going to take a lot of damage from an Icicle Spear as there's no shields remaining. Down goes Pangoro. And now back in comes the Dunsparce. But Dunsparce only to be met with an Icicle Spear. We still have our Gyarados with a pretty substantial amount of energy stored. And that's going to be pretty impactful for later. They are going to fire off a drill run to KO my Piloswine. And now, do I bring in the Sableye or do I bring in the Gyarados? I opt to bring in the Sableye. Sableye looking to get ahead on energy here, knowing that we can eat a drill run no problem at all, and overfarm quite a lot to have residual energy on both of our 2 remaining Pokemon for whatever they have in the back. I'm going to overfarm as much as I can. In the back, it's a Clodsire. I think we might be able to defeat this Clodsire. Hold on. Sableye is able to rip off Foul Play number 1 and number 2 at the Clodsire before it's able to strike first with a move of its own. Sableye has been chipped, so we have to be very careful as anything the Clodsire throws can be deadly. I'm going to zero-turn switch into my Gyarados and undercharge an Aqua Tail. This is very important. This incentivizes them to throw this Clodsire energy, as it would be wasted if they don't throw it here. And now they fire off the Stone Edge that KOs my Gyarados. In comes the Sableye. Sableye able to make the Foul Play and 2 more Shadow Claws Claws, and I am clicking on my foul play button. Down goes the Dunsparce. If the Clodsire comes back in, it won't be able to make a move in time. GG's to this trainer. Now you guys might be asking yourself, but Shmeaty, why did you decide to run Dazzling Gleam on this Sableye in this cup where flyers are at the absolute apex of the meta? That's a very good question that you posed there, and I don't really have a good answer for it, unfortunately. I just had Dazzling Gleam and it worked in a game or two, and then I was like, okay, cool, no problem at all, just gonna keep running this. And then I had some instances where I wanted Power Gem because I was stuck up against a flyer that I couldn't hit for any damage, and it was just a terrible time. Nevertheless, Talonflame is going to fire off a fly to KO my Gyarados, but not before Gyarados is able to grab both shields from them. And now Talonflame able to fire off a move here, but I don't really care. I'm just going to shield, overfarm as much as I can, then fire off a move to KO this Talonflame. The Incinerate is likely going to register there, but that's not what we're after. We're after this foul play KO, and now we're up a shield, and we have not conceded switch advantage. In the back, they do have Gastrodon. I think this is actually kind of ideal. I kind of want to see the Gastrodon here, because they're not going to be able to KO me with a Body Slam. They can try to go for a Body Slam plus a Mud Slap farm down, but that's greedy. They're not going to be able to get it. In comes a Cradily. Cradily switches into the Sableye, and this isn't particularly terrible. I'm just going to bring in my Piloswine right away, as the reason for that is because I can throw 7 Powder Snows. They switched and caught on alignment, meaning they didn't get a sneak of an Acid there, so I can throw on the CMP tie to their first move. They can fire off a move at my Piloswine. If this is a Water Pulse, we may be able to hang on just barely, but it isn't even a Water Pulse. Now we can always just shield up this move, as even if they were somehow doubled up here, Piloswine would easily win CMP, but that would be too easy, so I decided to go for the Stone Edge and zero bubble the Stone Edge. Down goes the Gastrodon. GG's to this trainer. Getting into the next one, it's going to be Gyarados, now leading into another Gyarados. Okay, this guy also a man of culture just like myself. Gyarados mirrors are largely going to be impacted by who gets the bait correct, who sends the nuke, who shields. This is a very interesting guessing game. I throw it just before the crunch, but they still shield it up for some reason. They are now going to fire off a move of their own. If it's an Aqua Tail, I can survive it, so I'm going to let it go. I thought I'd be able to get my Aqua Tail off there, but unfortunately I'm just not able to, so I have to bring in Sableye to look to get ahead on energy on this. I am going to convert my shield advantage into an energy lead. They are going to bring in Diggersby. Diggersby, kind of a little bit uncomfortable for this team to see right now. My Sableye doesn't really have an effective method of damaging it, as Foul Play doesn't do that much damage onto Diggersby. And although we can bring in Piloswine for some sick super effective damage, we're going to have to go down a shield early here. Diggersby stripping the shields off of my team, but they are still switch locked, meaning that I can get multiple Icicle Spears to land here, as they've only thrown 2 Fire Punches and their switch timer's not yet up. So I'm going to overfarm and play into just before they get their next Fire Punch, as I want to incentivize them to no-shield this so I can get this off my screen. Unfortunately, they don't do that, which is a little bit worse for me. But Sableye is healthy enough where I'm going to commit to overfarming here, and the opposing trainer does bring in the Gyarados. Very nice catch, anticipating that I was going to try to maximize my energy generation by throwing 5 Shadow Claws, as they were 5 Shadow Claws away from the Fire Punch. What is it they decided to bring in? They are thinking about it. In comes the Diggersby, but this is only going to be a Fire Punch. That's not enough for a Scorching Sands, so we are going to be able to tank that with ease, and I'm more than happy to just stay in here. They've already wasted their catch, so I'm going to throw 5 more Shadow Claws and go for another Foul Play onto the Diggersby. This will get rid of the Diggersby while mitigating any potential damage they could have thrown. In the back, they do have a Stunfisk, and unfortunately for me, Stunfisk is going to be just too bulky. It will survive this neutral Foul Play damage, and once it reaches that first Mud Bomb, I am going to get KO'd here. Foul Play number 2 gets them into the red health, but just not low enough. Sableye will get KO'd here by the Mud Bomb. GG's to this trainer. Hopping into the next one, we've got Gyarados now leading into a Shadow Talonflame. Maybe this one is as interesting as the last one and opts to stay in. No such luck for me. In comes a Malamar, but the Malamar is not Shadow, meaning that my Sableye can comfortably come in here and no shield a move. It's a lot better for the Shadow Malamar than it is for the non-Shadow Malamar, as another Foul Play here is going to get me into legitimate Psywave down range, unfortunately, so I am going to shield up this Foul Play and incentivize them to no shield. They are now currently in a range, however, where I can go for this Foul Play. The Foul Play should be enough to KO the Malamar from here. I'm going to go for it. The Foul Play is going to be enough to knock out. I don't have the Rock move, but I don't think my opponent knows that. I feel like most Sableyes, especially because PvPoke recommends to be on Power Gem, are going to be on Power Gem. I fall just short of making that second Foul Play. It would have been damage registration error if we were able to get it. I know the Talonflame has some stored energy here, so I try to CMP tie them. Unfortunately, they don't fall for it, and they get a full Incinerate for free. This is really difficult for me. I kind of have to hope that they go for a Flame Charge, and my Gyarados is miraculously able to survive. That was not a very miraculous survive by my standards, but in the back, you've got a Marowak, and that means that Piloswine might be able to clutch up here. The Marowak is likely going to be able to make one further move, but we do have a shield, and we will win CMP. However, we don't think that we need it as we fire off the next Icicle Spear here nigh immediately. Back in comes the Talonflame, but one Powder Snow will KO. GG's to this trainer. Getting into the next one, it's going to be Gyarados leading into yet another Pangoro. This is always a very tricky lead because they are recommended to run a Rock Slide, and I believe early on there was a team that featured a Rock Slide Pangoro, and that would be very devastating as my poor Gyarados, obviously, if you are looking at it, probably not going to take a Rock Slide too well. I decided to shield as a close combat would also do quite a lot of damage, and they built up well past the close combat. This, however, is only going to be enough for another Night Slash, so I am going to no-shield my Gyarados, knowing that I'll be able to survive that. They tried to snipe me with their Charge Bug, but fortunately we are able to preserve the Gyarados. The Volt Switch is going to defer onto the Piloswine. They go for the X-Scissors. That does still do a little bit of damage onto the Piloswine, and now I am in a pretty interesting spot. I know I would live this next X-Scissor, but it wouldn't be particularly well, and I don't want the Pangoro to come in for free and get some free farm down potential on me. So I'm going to go for the Stone Edge, go for the Undercharge, and I think that's the perfect Undercharge that we needed. We leave with as much energy as possible. Back in comes the Pangoro, but Pangoro thinks that it's going to be able to get a free KO onto the Piloswine because it has the typing advantage. It has another thing coming. They opt to no-shield. In the back, they have a Dunsparce. Dunsparce, the disappointment Pokemon, rearing its ugly head on my screen. Once again, what is this? I'm going for the Icicle Spear. We have some residual energy on our Gyarados, and we're going to throw it. I throw one, and then throw the move with my Gyarados. Aqua Tail going to get some nice chip damage onto the Dunsparce. I'm thinking I can make a second, and fortunately, Gyarados is quick pacing, able to get us a second Aqua Tail, and now, honestly, I'm pretty sure this Dunsparce is in farm down range for the Sableye. Sableye very comfortably able to live 2 Rock Slides or Drill Runs, and now in comes the Sableye. This Dunsparce really has no reason to be continuing to play the game, as they would need 3 moves to KO, and they're just not going to be able to get there. They're going to try for it, but before we're able to see that third move from the Dunsparce, Sableye able to make the foul play, KO the Dunsparce. GG's. Alright, in the next lead, we do see a pretty problematic Pokemon, non-Shadow Abomasnow. Now, Shadow Abomasnow's a little more frail, which makes it more handleable or manageable for my backline. However, the non-Shadow is actually pretty threatening, as its bulk allows it to live the Shadow Claws and foul play pressure from the Sableye with ease, as well as not really being particularly threatened by a Crunch or an Icicle Spear by my Piloswine. Going to bring in my Sableye only to be met with a Diggersby, and so far this game is going about as poorly as it could. I'm going to fire off a foul play right on the CMP tie with their next Fire Punch, but after that Scorching Sands, a Fire Punch will likely be enough to KO my Sableye, so I'm going to shield up here as I do have quite a lot of energy stored. I'm going to fire off a Dazzling Gleam one before they make their next Fire Punch, and thinking that throwing the Fire Punch immediately would be too obvious, I decide to throw one Shadow Claw, then switch into the Gyarados, where this energy is completely walled. They've showed their entire moveset, so it's not like a surprise Hyper Beam is going to one-shot my Gyarados, and now they look to bring in the Abomasnow, but Abomasnow is pretty massively behind on energy. They go for a Weather Ball. I think, realistically, this is probably the best usage I'm going to get out of my Gyarados, unfortunately, as it's not going to be aligned onto anything good for it. So I go for the Crunch. It gets the Abomasnow into a much more manageable range for my back 2 Pokemon. Looking to bring in my Piloswine here. Piloswine able to build up to the Icicle Spear and switch out to catch a Weather Ball onto our Sableye. That is going to be a pretty nice catch for us. Unfortunately, they're able to make yet another Weather Ball here. It's only going to be a Weather Ball, but I think I want to shield here. So I decide to expend my shield on the Weather Ball. They show the Crustle, stay in for about 5 turns, then make a game-winning catch. I zero bubble my Stone Edge, and that Undercharge is just too much, as the Diggersby is able to hang on very low health make a Fire Punch, and this game is shifting rapidly out of our favor. Unfortunately for us, there is only one win con remaining, which may not even be a true win con, as I don't even believe the Stone Edge would KO. They are going to shield it up, and I'm just going to top left. The opponent thoroughly outplayed me there. Very good catch. Wow, I didn't even know this Pokemon was eligible for this cup. We've got a Golurk on the lead in the next game, and they are going to safe switch into Malamar. Gyarados putting this opponent in a pretty difficult position. Aqua Tail going to do a sizable amount of damage onto that Malamar. Malamar might just be able to make 2 moves here, but even if they do, I can no-shield 1 and shield the second for a pretty nice amount of energy lead on my Sableye. It turns out we don't even need to shield there. I overfarm as much as I can to fake a potential Power Gem here. Power Gem wouldn't straight up KO the Pidgeot, and I was really hoping to get that second Foul Play off and live on very low HP. No such luck for me though. In comes the Pidgeot. Pidgeot's going to be a pretty scary Pokemon for us to deal with here. In comes the Golurk once again. Golurk is going to be met with an Icicle Spear, and Golurk is so glassy that this is actually still very threatening. I think this is one of those weird games that I had where I was running Avalanche for some reason. I don't know, but it turns out to be in our favor there, as I think an Icicle Spear may not have KO'd at -2. In comes the Gyarados. Gyarados going to be able to make 1 Aqua Tail, but not quite 2. This Pidgeot fighting for its life, but there's just nothing it can do. It's not going to be able to make enough moves, and they go for the full send of the Brave Bird, just yeeting it as their last win con. I respect it. We're getting into the next match, and it is a horrendous lead. Unova Stunfisk into our Shadow Gyarados. I safe switch into my Sableye, and they counter switch a Scrafty. I'm just going for it. 7 Shadow Claws. We've got the Dazzling Gleam. Are they going to respect it? Down goes the Scrafty, the screenshot for the boys, and they're going to bring in their Gastrodon. But Gastrodon is now going to be permanently aligned onto Gyarados in the endgame, as long as we just don't concede switch advantage here. The only thing I can do to potentiate myself losing this game from here is switching into my Gyarados at any second here. I have to be able to make sure that if my Gyarados comes back onto the screen, I'm able to effectively switch into my Piloswine. Nevertheless, they go for the Body Slam. It's not going to be enough to KO, and some more Shadow Claw chip is going to be all we need. Back in comes the Gyarados. They switch out into the Stunfisk, see the Piloswine, fire off a move here, but realistically, there's no move that this Stunfisk can throw that's going to be enough to get rid of this Piloswine. Piloswine with the shield advantage will get us that game as the opponent top lefts. We've now made it to the final game of the video, and it's a very interesting lead to boot. Shadow Scizor up against our Gyarados. Gyarados able to effectively fire off 9 Dragon Breaths and the Aqua Tail for perfect fast move timing, and we get to the first move on perfect timing. You love to see it. I'm going to be able to fire off a move at my Gyarados. Gyarados never going to no shield here, going to fire off the Night Slash, and I'm going to build up to the next Aqua Tail, and unfortunately, they catch me playing a little bit on autopilot and make a pretty nice catch onto their Altaria. But that does give my Gyarados the ability to overfarm, build up just shy of that crunch, and now bring in our Piloswine. Piloswine going to catch what would only ever be a Sky Attack, as that is the cheapest move on the Altaria. And before Altaria is able to make another move, Piloswine gets the full farm down. This is, once again, for some reason, an Avalanche Piloswine, so I guess this is one of those games. Avalanche is going to get the shield from the Scizor. Scizor very afraid of potentially no shielding that move, and now it's all up to this. I bring in the Sableye. Sableye is going to be able to comfortably take a Night Slash from the Scizor. If they boost though, I might just lose. Fortunately, no boost for them. They're going to be able to make another Night Slash here, and I think my win con here is committing to the full Shadow Claw farm down. They're going to have to switch here. They do not switch, and in the back, they've got Dunsparce. I don't understand the hype about Dunsparce in this cup, but we're going to be able to fire off this Dazzling Gleam. Dazzling Gleam does do pretty sizable amount of damage onto the Dunsparce. We bank the move for later, bring in the Gyarados. The Aqua Tail is going to be enough to KO, and when our Dunsparce, or rather when our Sableye comes back in, the Dunsparce is going to lose CMP. The Dunsparce decides to throw a move at the Gyarados for some reason, maybe thinking that last rollout KO'd, but they were very off with that assumption. Another foul play going to be reached by the Sableye that will KO the Dunsparce. GG's to this trainer. If you made it to this point in the video, thank you so much for watching. Do I think Shadow Sableye is necessarily the best pick for the Jungie Cup meta? Not necessarily. I think there are better things that you can run, but this video serves more as an experiment to test out this very high ranked Sableye, as it actually plays quite differently than the old Shadow Sableye that I used to run, which some of you may be familiar with, was a pretty attack-weighted one, which is able to do some interesting things like win CMP over Pokemon like Feraligatr, some variants of Empoleon, Dedenne, other Pokemon in its current CMP bracket like Goodra as well. But this variant is also, it has a very different playstyle where you're able to basically rely on the fact that you are still relatively bulky but output decent damage and be able to live charge moves. It's a lot more viable, I feel like, on the safe switch where the meta is not necessarily hostile towards it, but I feel like this meta kind of is. And it's really just a very versatile Pokemon that I really like getting the chance to run. So, hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Thank you once again so much for watching. I've been Shmeaty. I hope to see you all again next time, and have a good rest of your day. See ya.